Stories written by Jamie Rex. Audiobooks narrated by Samuel Dudley, aka Uncle Mammy. Story 2. Burgers. Story 3. Tag. The air was filled with whooping and yelling. The ground shook to the sound of thundering feet, and a vast dust cloud billowed up behind the stampeding herd. With nostrils flared and mad panic in their eyes, the school children bumped and jostled each other as they swept out of the coach and poured in through the doors of Burgerskip. They laughed to see the smiling white face of the 20-meter clown which towered over the entrance and bade them welcome. It was the face of Seamus Old Burger, the man who had created Burgerskip. His cardboard lookalike surveyed this scene of hysterical greed and beamed from cutout ear to cutout ear. Though nobody knew it, it was the smile of death. Just another day in Crawley High Street. Just one day closer to complete obliteration of the planet Earth. Meanwhile, somewhere in South America, a herd of real cattle grazed in a clearing on long, lush grass, unaware that Seamus Old Burger had already decided their fate. In his factory, row upon row of little brown polystyrene coffins lay waiting for them, lids agape. Next door, jars of pickled cucumbers, shreds of lettuce, and crispy burnt buns sat in readiness, and beyond them was the slaughterhouse, Seamus's favorite haunt, where the cattle would be smothered to death with lashings of tomato ketchup. Yet, disgusting though this was, Seamus's evil plan for world domination through the minds and stomachs of its children was having a far more sinister effect. In his bid for global expansion, Seamus was sacrificing the heart and lungs of the planet, the Amazonian rainforest. The helicopter swooped low over the treetops, brushing the very highest branches with its floats. "Down there!" shouted the pilot to the clown sitting beside him. "What is?" shouted Seamus back, trying to make himself heard above the noise of the engine. "The greenest, most fertile land you'll find for thousands of miles," said the pilot. "But it's all trees." "It is a forest," replied the pilot. "What do you expect?" "I cannot graze my cattle on twigs and branches," screamed Seamus aggressively. "They need wide, open spaces." "So," said the pilot, "cut all the trees down." "I know," said Seamus, who, like all evil masterminds, had to be the first to think up good ideas. "I'll cut all the trees down and graze my cattle there." "I wish I thought of that," said the pilot. Seamus's eyes lit up with pound signs as the helicopter climbed steeply and headed for home. A family of monkeys, frightened by the screaming engines of the metal bird, leapt for safety. The smallest of them, only 3 weeks old, did not have the strength to jump as far as his parents, and plummeted onto the forest floor below. When his mother found him, his neck was broken, and he was quite dead. The next day, the bulldozers moved in. Seamus needed more space to fatten up more cattle, because more cattle meant more burgers, and more burgers meant more money. Sadly, though, more money did not make Seamus any nicer a person. The forest was a beautiful place, For hundreds of years, the trees had been left to grow in peace, and now they threw open their arms, offering safe havens to all the thousands of animals that lived beneath them. Flowers like nothing you have ever seen before, or ever likely to see again, blossomed in a rainbow of breathtaking colors and glistening streams, bringing life to everything they touched, nattered constantly to each other as they floated down to the mighty Amazon River. At the center of this untouched paradise stood the tallest tree in the forest. The Amazonian Indians called it Panachek, which, roughly translated, means God. It was a huge 300-foot mahogany tree which, so legend told, was possessed of magical powers. From its roots ran the roots of every other tree in the forest, and the Indians believed that if Panachek should die, then the whole forest would die with it. Seamus O'Burger was driving the biggest bulldozer. He screamed with delight as he thrust the lever forward. The giant claw on the front of his machine chewed a path through the undergrowth and crashed pitilessly into the nearest tree. There was a cry of pain as the roots were torn from the ground, but Seamus didn't hear it. He put his foot down hard and drove on towards the center of the forest, his caterpillar tracks biting into the fallen trunk and making it bleed. For days on end, all that could be heard in the forest was the sound of men shouting, trees falling, chainsaws buzzing, and Seamus O'Burger counting his money. Seamus's forest guide was an Amazonian Indian. He had not realized the full extent of Seamus's evil plan until it was too late. "I want to go back," he said one morning. "Nonsense!" snapped Seamus. "You can't! You'll go when I say so, and not before!" The guide hung his head and mumbled something about Panachek. "Speak up!" shouted Seamus as he sank his teeth into a Burgerskip big beef breakfast bap. "That tree over there," said the guide, pointing to a magnificent 300-foot mahogany, "is Panachek. If you cut it down, you will bring the whole world tumbling around your ears." "Mumbo jumbo!" sneered Seamus, adjusting his red nose. "It's just a tree. Cut it down!" he shouted to his men, who were busy cleaning their saws. "No!" pleaded the guide, sinking to his knees in front of Seamus. "You don't know what you're doing!" Seamus swept past the guide and knocked him to the forest floor. "Pull it down!" he screamed again. "Pull it down and bring me its highest branch as a trophy!" The lumberjacks seemed reluctant to carry out Seamus's orders. "What is it now?" said Seamus. The leader of the lumberjacks stepped forward. "We are afraid," he said. "There is such magic in that tree. We dare not touch it." Seamus was in no mood to argue. "Then I shall!" he fumed, grabbing the nearest chainsaw and striding up towards the mahogany tree all by himself. As the teeth of the saw sank into the bark, an ominous silence fell over the forest. The birds had stopped squawking. The animals had stopped moving. The forest was holding its breath. The chainsaw gouged the first lump of wood out of Panachek's side, and the mighty tree let out a groan. To you or me, it would have sounded like the creaking of a branch, but it was a groan. Sap poured out of the cut in a vain attempt to heal the wound, but Seamus was taking no prisoners. He cut deeper and deeper. The rest of the forest was now in tune with Panachek's pain. All the flowers closed their petals. creepers shriveled and leaves started falling from the trees. Then, slowly, as Seamus brought Panachek's life closer and closer to its end, a low, mournful wailing spread far and wide across the treetops as the forest exhaled its final breath. Panachek crashed to the ground, and Seamus stood triumphant by its severed stump. "Now," he said, "I can graze my cattle!" "Yes," said the guide, "but the forest is dead." Seamus O'Burger made a lot of burgers out of the extra cattle that he was able to graze in his clearing. So many burgers, in fact, that soon he was feeding the entire population of Great Britain with them. Unfortunately, though, there were a lot of people in Great Britain, and Seamus quickly discovered that he was fast running out of land on which to feed his enormous herd of cattle. He went up in the helicopter again to look for new areas of the rainforest to knock down, and he would have found some had not the most extraordinary event taken place that very same day in Crawley High Street. A rather unpleasant young girl named Charlotte had been pestering her father all day for a Burgerskip Jolly Burger. "With chips," she kept adding, in case he hadn't got the message. Her father had finally relented, as all weak parents tend to do. They had duly driven down to Burgerskip in Crawley High Street and purchased a Jolly Burger, complete with a free Seamus O'Burger smiley face mask. Outside in the street, such was agreed, Charlotte tore down the countless wrappings, dropping them all on the pavement, closed her eyes in sheer unadulterated delight, and sank her teeth into the bun. "Ah!" she suddenly screamed. "Pie! Pie!" She spat bits of burger all over the road. "Charlotte, what are you doing?" yelled her father, who was more than a little embarrassed. "There's a tree in my Jolly Burger!" she wailed. "A tree?" said her father, snatching the soggy bun from her mouth. He opened it up and took a step backwards in surprise. She was right. There, sticking up in the middle of Charlotte's Jolly Burger, was a tiny mahogany tree. It was only 4 centimeters tall, but it was a tree all right. Seamus O'Burger heard the news in his helicopter. It was flashed over the two-way radio, which linked him at all times with his own headquarters. "A tree and a Jolly Burger? It's unthinkable! Turn this thing around!" he shouted to the pilot. "If the press gets hold of this story, I'm ruined!" Back in the offices of Burgerskip, Seamus's team of burger experts were quaking in their boots. "He'll sack us all for sure," said one. "It's not my fault," said another. "I just make the boxes." "Well, where did the tree come from?" said a third, who was hiding under the boardroom table. Just then, Seamus burst into the room. His eyes were blazing with anger, and tiny flecks of white spittle dribbled from the corners of his mouth. He tore off his spinning bow tie, hurled his red nose into the bin, and wiped the clown make-off off his face with his spotty red handkerchief. "Gentlemen," he snarled, "yeah, let me down! All of you! Find me the culprit! Find me the imbecile who planted a tree in Charlotte's Jolly Burger!" A nervous hand went up at the back of the room. "What?" screamed Seamus. "Mr. O'Burger, sir," quivered the tiny voice. "I'm afraid that it's not just Charlotte's anymore." You could have heard a pin drop. The man gulped and went on. "In the past hour, there have been reports of mahogany trees growing in Jolly Burgers up and down the country. It seems to be happening everywhere." The little man burst into hysterical sobs. "Don't hit me!" he squealed as Seamus rose slowly from his chair. Steam was coming out of the trick rose on his lapel. "If it was King Henry VIII, I'd send you on to the tower and have your miserable little heads cut off!" There was a knock at the door. They all looked round. There was another knock. "Cooley!" shouted Seamus, but the knocking continued. Then the door swung open. "What do you want?" said Seamus testily. "Get out!" "I should have made you listen before," said the figure in the doorway. "This time you will listen." It was the forest guide who had tried to stop Seamus from harming the mighty mahogany tree, Panachek. "I have come to tell you exactly what you have done," said the guide, walking into the room. "I chopped down a tree," said Seamus casually. "You killed Panachek. You murdered the rainforest, and all in the name of greed. Now you will pay the price. It is written that whomsoever defiles the god Panachek shall be haunted by its ghost until he too is dead." "But I'm not dead," taunted Seamus. "Maybe not you, personally, Mr. Seamus Smiley Face O'Burger, but your company, Burgerskip, is. Take a look outside." Seamus O'Burger's face fell so far when he looked out of the window that he was never able to smile again. Where once had been a Burgerskip restaurant, now stood not one mahogany tree, but thousands. Thousands more were springing up even as he watched. Cars had been abandoned, and people fled in terror as 100-meter trees tore through the tarmac, as if it were no more than tissue paper. "This is a trick!" screamed Seamus. "No trick," said the guide. "Justice. You destroy our lives. Panachek will destroy yours. This is happening all over the country, Mr. O'Burger, to every single one of your restaurants." Seamus O'Burger was a desperate man, and desperate men do stupid things. He leapt forward in a mad frenzy and grabbed the guide around his neck. "You will pay for this!" he ranted, squeezing as hard as he could. "You cannot destroy Seamus O'Burger!" A terrible rumbling shook the boardroom. The brightly colored portraits of the clown tyrant fell off the wall, and just as the guide thought he would surely suffocate, the ghost of Panachek burst through the floorboards, scooping up Seamus O'Burger in its twisted branches, and climbed up and up towards the sky. Seamus O'Burger was never seen again. An Australian farmer found a clown's waistcoat in his pig's trough some years later, but nobody could prove that it belonged to Seamus, despite the relish stains down the front. Burgerskip never sold another burger, which meant, incidentally, that the streets became litter-free. Charlotte became a vegetarian, and Britain, due to the fact that it was now the proud owner of the largest rainforest in the world, noticed a slight alteration in its weather pattern. Oh yes, and roast parrot became as common as roast chicken on people's tables for Sunday lunch.